Hi, this is Lobo with LS Wild, and going to talk about our suppressor covers here. These suppressor covers are made to fit each suppressor, and we ask that you give us the measurements just because there's so many suppressors out there and so many options that we want to make sure that we get the right dimensions from you. And to measure it, and you can see this one is just barely over 1.5, and it's coming short of 1 3/4, which would be 1.75. So I can comfortably say that this would require a 1.6 diameter suppressor cover. So you always go up, round up, even if it's low. So up to 1.5. Order at 1.5. If it's above 1.5, jump to the next one, which is 1.6. If it's 1.6, then that's fine. And 1.6.1, then you're going to want to, or 1.61, you're going to want to jump up to 1.7. And so that's how these suppressor covers work. And so additionally, we have the length. Now the length, we always have a taper at the back end, and that is so the suppressor cover does not fly forward. And so what you end up with is this behind the suppressor cover. To measure the length, you always just measure the length of it, and you measure the length of anything that is going to be the 1.6. In this case, it's going to be 1.6 all the way to this back end here. This hub, because it is a smaller diameter, I will leave out the length of that hub. And the reason why is this. So I have 6 1/8, so I could put 6 1/8 in there. I could also comfortably put 6 in there. Because you can stretch it, work it, stretch it. You really can't shrink it because it won't stay shrunk once it starts shooting. But you do have a little bit of flexibility to make it longer rather than shorter. And the reason I won't include this portion of it, you can, but again, being more precise just makes it fit that much better. And the reason I don't need to include this particular hub, that hub will slide into this angled section. So it'll slide further back into the taper. So that's why I don't want to include it. This is the same suppressor cover, but with a hub that does not extend past beyond that, and so I could measure it still at the same 6 1/8, and it is going to fit just fine. I could also put it at 6 and stretch it, and it'll come right to the end. But again, we can't ever, just because of the differences in hubs, differences in suppressors, and the nature of the covers, it's never going to be really perfectly exact unless you give us those as precise as possible. Okay, and so the suppressor cover will slide on, and you can see that it slides up and over, and it stops right there on the back of the suppressor. And so in this particular case, I will take this one off and set that behind. You can see this cover, it does extend past the end of the suppressor a little bit, and that is perfectly fine. It will not affect the shooting, and it does provide a little bit of protection to the corners of the suppressor. Now, if I were to push it on and really pull it forward, it will stretch forward like that, but I can leave it on and it will basically stay on the suppressor like that. Again, if you wanted a little bit shorter, you could leave the shorter measurements there. But this is a 6-inch suppressor, and you can see that this particular cover is about 7 inches long. This one is sized a little bit longer because I do like to protect the corners of the suppressor. So now I will show how to put the covers on. Sometimes the covers are, again, a little bit tighter. Sometimes they're just a tiny bit looser. Again, tiny measurements matter. The way that I put these on is I will hold the suppressor, and here is the seam, and so I will put the seam on just like this, and then I will pull and stretch the cover and work it over the edges, and if it's tight like some are, then I will pull it on and slide it over like that. Okay, and so that is how the suppressor cover goes on. Again, you will always have this angled portion right here, and this angled portion is the stop that prevents the suppressor cover from flying off as the recoil pushes the suppressor back. To put the suppressor cover on, I'll show you a couple of different ways. One is if you happen to have a piece of fabric, you can take the fabric, wrap it around, and then twist it up, feed it through. As you feed it through, and then you can pull the suppressor cover over the edges. And some suppressors have sharp angles that will make it hard to pull up and over, and so adding that extra step then allows it to pull out just like so. And so now I have it on, and I pull it over, and then I put it on like that. So here we have the suppressor cover on. Again, this one fits just a little bit past the end, which I personally prefer to protect the edge a little bit. And then it always has this overhang here. Once you have it on, your cover isn't going to come off. The paper, I will put the piece of paper over the end of the suppressor, slide it over the suppressor cover over it, and then I'll work it over the paper. Again, the paper just allows it to avoid the sharp edges of the suppressor, and then it just pulls on, and then just pull it out. Make sure that you have all of the paper left, that you didn't leave any inside, and you can put that on like that. Another method is with a piece of plastic, and so you just take the piece of plastic, the same methodology. You can wrap it around, and then just want to feed that through, and then you push it on like that, and then it will slide on. And then once I do that, then I grab it, and then I'll pull the suppressor on, it'll slide over. Once I get past it, I'll squeeze this and then pull the plastic out. And so the suppressor cover will be longer than your suppressor to allow for this. If it does hang over much more than this, let us know. And again, if it were the same size as the suppressor, then once it is fitted on, if it were not longer to allow for that, then it would not be able to fit. And so that's why the suppressor cover is actually longer than the suppressor. But once on, if it does hang over, there's a measurement error. Could be an error in your measurement, could be an error in our measurement. Again, if we do need to remake one for you, we'll remake it and get it right out to you. But again, you're going to want to make sure and get us this measurement where it is the main body, and if it begins to taper, then you don't have to include that taper. Give us the main body, and so this would be a 6-inch long suppressor, or 6 1/8. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us at help@lswild.com.